Hey guys, what's up? I'm sitting in the parking lot waiting for my husband's train, and there was totally a guy over there who just got out of his car. He's trying to climb like on the roof or the back bumper of his car. He's smoking, he's got his cell phone out, and he's drinking from, you know, those bottles of like margarita mixer that you get at the supermarket? Like there's the margarita one, there's the Bloody Mary one. He's just like chugging one of those. That is random. Did not expect that. Okay. Anyway, this video is actually not about anything to do with that. It's about, I want to talk about superficial offenses, you know, that a lot of Christians, a lot of fundamentalists in particular, but it's not a problem exclusive to fundamentalism. Certain Christians get their panties in a bunch about it, and we get asked about this stuff a lot at church. So specifically, I want to talk about stuff like, I want to talk about Harry Potter, World of Warcraft, Lord of the Rings, you know, Magic the Gathering, fantasy novels, science fiction, whatever. I want to talk about all that stuff because in many circles it's controversial, right? I recently had an inmate come up to me and ask me if he was going to hell for playing Magic. And I said, well, if you are going to hell, I doubt that that's why. But that's something that I definitely need more than 5 minutes at the end of a Wednesday night to address. So, anyway, let's rewind a few years. A couple years ago, this was shortly before I became Orthodox, I taught music at a school run by fundamentalist Christians in South Jersey. Hated it. You try working for the fundies while you're an Orthodox catechumen. Disaster. Anyway, for their Christmas show, or no, their spring musical show, one of my classes was doing the puppet show song from Sound of Music. High on a hill was a lonely goat herd, da-da-da-da-da. We got to the part in class about men drinking beer with the foam afloat, and one of my students raised his hand and he was like, "Oh, Mr. Ari, we can't say that word." I said, "What word, men?" And he goes, "No, beer." And like the people around him, the kids were like, "Oh." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Yeah, my daddy won't like that. Can we pick a new word?" So we sang men drinking Coke with the foam afloat. But what? What? This is like, I may have already mentioned this once or twice before, either on this channel or another couple, you know, videos that I've got scattered around the internet. I recently heard a story from a kids pastor in Florida about, he grew up in a church that was kind of like that, and at one point, shortly after his first child was born, he had gone back to see his folks, and during that visit, they went to church, and during church, he heard somebody reference, this was like the pastor, he heard somebody reference the actor Jean-Claude Van Damme as Jean-Claude Van Dang. What? Because they were so, like, concerned with the letter of the law. I mean, come on, people. So anyway, this gets extended to science fiction, fantasy, science, biology, space, you know, any of these subjects or hobbies, you know, like the role-playing games, a lot of people get really, really, really upset about. And we are delving into the realm of my opinion here. I have to make that clear. I'm not speaking in any kind of official capacity, and I mean, I never am. But this is just my opinion. The problem, I believe, okay, I love World of Warcraft. I played it avidly for years. I love Blizzard's Diablo series. I love Lord of the Rings. So this is not a video intended to bash any of those things in any way. But as a serious Christian, I had to say, well, okay, if people have problems with these things, what are those problems, and do they hold water? What I've been able to distill from this is that the problems that people are concerned about are actually not the problems that may exist. People think that if you're playing, let's say, magic is always the big one. You know, it's always the first thing to get mentioned is being, like, demonic. There are a lot of people who are very disturbed by those kinds of games because they use, you know, magical spells and skills, and there's these, you know, magical, fantastic, mythological creatures in them, there are, beings from other dimensions, and people get worried that that is somehow glorifying the devil or demons, or is somehow attempting to actually use magic, like in a serious sense, not as in a game. Maybe they think it's a slippery slope. I really think that God has bigger things to worry about than card games. The issue for me, the concern for me, is actually it's not one of we should be afraid to discuss matters that are demonic or satanic, or it's not even it's wrong to write a book or make a movie in which magic exists as part of the plot. My concern is entirely different from that. It is anesthesia. Anesthesia and the dulling of our sensitivity to not only violence, not only sex, but also to religious matters as well. Now, that's not limited to the fantasy genre, is it? That's not limited to horror. It's not limited to science fiction. Okay? Each of us we have to kind of be our own parent here and say, well, if I'm going to play, for example, a computer game like Diablo, which is amazing, by the way, if I'm going to play Diablo, I just have to make sure that I understand, number one, that this is a game and it's not real life. Number two, I have to keep in the forefront of my mind that I cannot allow demons, I cannot allow the concept or the person of Satan to become, in my mind, commonplace, to become non-disturbing, right? I can't get comfortable with those entities and the idea of those entities and the ways that they work in the world. So I don't want to start thinking that they are just fiction. And that's what I think the problem is. It's the same thing with, for example, Monty Python's Life of Brian. If my husband ever sees this video, he's going to get so mad because he loves this movie. If you have never seen it, it's about a young man in Jerusalem who gets mistaken for Christ. And he's not Christ, and he keeps trying to tell people that he isn't, but for some reason he keeps getting caught up in these situations where they believe he's Jesus, and he actually gets crucified at the end. Now, there's nothing in that film inherently that is blasphemous. Okay, there's nothing that is inherently mocking Christ, because again, it's a comedy film. Okay, but then again, the point is this guy isn't Jesus. But I really am very uncomfortable with it, and it's because it is a comedy about those matters. It treats the crucifixion more lightly than it should be. And yes, I understand in the film it wasn't Jesus on the cross, but I don't care. I don't care. It's still treating these cosmically uber significant events, spiritual events, events that are important in salvation history, even for people who don't recognize how important they are yet. It's treating them as if they're just common plot elements, and that is very spiritually dangerous. I believe that is one of the most insidious ways that we allow ourselves to be deceived, is by this indiscriminate intake of information, and media and entertainment, until we're cynical about everything, and we don't really believe in anything, and everything is all relative. Right? So, again, this is my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. May not be worth much. Don't pharisaically cut things out of your life. Understand why you're cutting them out, or understand why you're limiting them. Because otherwise, these people who do things like just completely cut out certain words like beer, great, good for them, fine. If their faith is really that fragile to get offended by the word beer, I mean, I would like to remind you that our Lord turned water into wine at Cana. But if their faith is that fragile, okay, fine. I won't make a stumbling block about it. But think about that. Think about that. The problem is not the game or the book or the TV program. The problem is our kind of just welcoming all of these sources of input indiscriminately into our mind without any kind of screening process. So it takes a little bit more thought, takes a little bit more active participation, decision-making, than just blindly making some kinds of spiritual decisions. But really, I think that's where we are. I think that you know, God gave us brains for a reason. So, anyway, I hope that makes sense. I'm up against the time limit here. I have more to say, but I will be back in another video so that I can upload this thing in one piece. Okay, God be with you.